Today, we're diving into the life of a truly monumental figure from history. His story is so incredible, it honestly feels like an epic, a saga of faith, unbelievable courage, and a deep, unwavering sense of justice. And it all begins with this, a powerful and mysterious quote. He was born where no one else could be born, in the house of God. I mean, just think about that for a second. It immediately sparks the sense of wonder, right? A birth so unique it happened in the most sacred place imaginable. So the big question is, who is this person whose life story starts with an event that sounds like a miracle? His name is Hazrat Ali, and his titles, wow, they tell you so much. He's called the Lion of God for his legendary courage, the Gate of Knowledge for his incredible wisdom, and he would become the fourth caliph, a leader of the early Muslim community. So let's start at the beginning, because that miraculous birth really sets the stage for everything that follows. This first chapter of his life is all about these extraordinary moments that laid the groundwork for the legend he would become. Okay, so this timeline here just maps out these incredible early years. It starts, of course, with his birth inside the Kaaba itself. Then, as just a kid around 10 years old, he's the very first male to embrace Islam. A few years later, when the Prophet Muhammad gathers his clan and asks for support, everyone is silent, except for the young Ali, who stands up and pledges everything he has. And that courage just grows, leading to this unbelievable moment where he literally sleeps in the Prophet's bed, knowing assassins are coming for him, just so the Prophet could escape to Medina safely. You know, their relationship was more than just family or friendship. It was this incredibly deep, spiritual bond. Later in Medina, the Prophet was pairing his followers as symbolic brothers, and Ali was the last one left standing, until the Prophet took him and said these words. It really solidified a brotherhood that would define their entire lives. All right, so now the scene shifts. A new chapter begins. The community in Medina needed a defender, a champion, and Ali, the Prophet's spiritual brother, was about to step into that role and become its ultimate protector, the Sword of Islam. Over 90. Just let that number sink in for a moment. At the Battle of Uhud, the Muslim army was scattered, the Prophet was wounded and in danger, and Ali stood his ground, defending him almost single-handedly. He took more than 90 wounds to his body. It's just a staggering testament to his valor. And during that same battle, his bravery was so extraordinary that it set a voice from the heavens echoed across the battlefield, making this declaration. It means, there is no youth like Ali, and no sword like Zulfikar. Zulfikar being the name of his famous two-pronged sword. This became his nickname, forever tying him to unparalleled courage. But here's the thing, his strength was so much more than just physical. In a legendary one-on-one duel, he faced Arabia's most feared warrior, a man they said was equal to 1,000 soldiers. Ali got the upper hand and knocked him down, but right at the moment of victory, he stopped. He just paused and walked away for a moment. Why? Why would he do that? While his opponent had spit in his face in a final act of defiance. And Ali felt that flash of personal anger. He knew that if he killed him in that moment, it would be partly for his own ego. So he stepped back, let the anger fade, and made sure the final blow was delivered purely for his faith, not for personal revenge. That one moment tells you everything about his character. So after the Prophet passed away, the battlefields fell silent for Ali, and for the next 25 years, he would have to show a completely different kind of strength, not with a sword, but with an immense, almost unimaginable patience. He believed he was the rightful successor, but he stepped aside to prevent a civil war that could have torn the new community apart. And his own words here, they just paint such a vivid, painful picture of what that choice cost him. He describes it as a thorn pricking my eye and a bone stuck in my throat. His patience wasn't passive, it was an active, difficult sacrifice for the greater good. And during this time, everyone sought out his wisdom. This famous story is a perfect example. So you have two men who share their meal, 8 loaves of bread in total, with a traveler. The traveler thanks them with 8 coins. So how do you split the money fairly? Well, Ali's logic is just brilliant. He breaks it all down into pieces. Turns out the man with 5 loaves actually gave 7 pieces to the common pool, while the man with 3 loaves only gave 1. So justice demands a 7-to-1 split. It's just a fantastic example of how he saw justice in every little detail. Finally, after those 25 long years, the people came to him. They insisted he become their leader. And when he finally accepted the caliphate, he ushered in a style of leadership that was just completely different from anything the world's empires had ever seen.
I mean, just look at this contrast. While emperors ruled from grand palaces, Ali lived in a simple mud house. While they wore crowns and silk, he patched his own shoes. There's a famous story where he blew out the state-owned candle when a visitor wanted to talk about personal matters, because he refused to use public funds for a private chat. For him, a leader was a servant, first and foremost.
And his spiritual authority was just undeniable. During one campaign, his army was dying of thirst. He went to a spot and with his own hands moved a massive boulder that hundreds of men couldn't budge, revealing a fresh spring underneath. A local Christian monk saw this and was stunned. He said that in his own holy books, it was written that only a prophet or his chosen successor could move that specific rock. His principles were never just talk. At the Battle of Siffin, the enemy army cut his forces off from the Euphrates River. His soldiers fought hard and won back control of the water. They wanted to do the same thing to the enemy, cut off their water supply. But Ali refused. He said water was a gift from God for all living things, and he would never repay injustice with more injustice. And that brings us to the final, heartbreaking, and powerful chapter of his life. A story that doesn't really end in tragedy, but in what he saw as his greatest victory. It happened during the holy month of Ramadan. In the quiet of the pre-dawn prayer, at the exact moment he was in prostration to God, an assassin struck him from behind with a poisoned sword. He was attacked at his most humble, his most devout, his most vulnerable. But as the fatal blow landed, his response wasn't a cry of agony. It was a declaration. By the Lord of the Kaaba, he said, I have succeeded. In his mind, a life spent in service, ending in martyrdom while in prayer, that was the ultimate success. That was winning. And even on his deathbed, his principles didn't waver for an instant. He saw that his captured killer was thirsty, and he ordered his family to give the man a drink. He instructed his sons that justice must be precise, one strike for one strike, and he strictly forbade any kind of torture or mistreatment of the man who had just taken his life. And really, that's the heart of his legacy. More than the warrior, more than the ruler. He was a man whose entire life was an exercise in principle. His final, truest victory wasn't over an enemy on a battlefield, but the complete and total triumph of his own commitment to justice and mercy, right to the very end. And that's what I want to leave you with. In our world today, with all its conflicts and complexities, what can we learn from a life like this? What does a true legacy of justice actually look like?